Welcome back to my shop. My name is Guy, and this is the third and final video I'm doing of building this, which is a Demilune hall table. This time I'm going to install the ebony inlay around the outside. I'm also going to install this really cool segmented tiger maple medallion right here in the center. I'll put the finish on it. When I put the finish on, I'm going to show you how I popped the grain on the tiger maple. This project was a lot of fun, so let's get to work. The tabletop clamped down to my bench here. I'm going to take my circle cutting jig with the 1/16 inch bit, and I'm going to plunge a 1/16 inch down and create just a small groove going all the way around between the border and the field of this tabletop. Over at the table saw, I've installed a regular 7 1/4 inch circular saw blade because it has a very thin kerf, and I'm going to take a 1/16 of an inch off on the outside of this piece of ebony for the inlay. I'm over here at the bandsaw. I've got the blade set almost 1/8 of an inch, and I've got a piece of hardboard here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push this through till it hits the end, and I'm going to clamp it down, and that's going to give me a zero clearance insert for my bandsaw. Now I can cut this strip down to size. I'll cut 2 of these just to make sure I have enough, because I may break one. Well, with this strip cut, I'm going to put some glue in here. I've made sure that this groove is completely clear of any debris so it'll seat properly. And I've got my glue bottle with a really super fine tip on it. I'll put glue on one side, turn around, and put glue on the other side. I want to make sure there's enough glue in here. So I've got all the glue squeeze out cleaned up, and I want to make sure I do a really good job on the inside or the field side, because I don't want to have to scrape that veneer or sand it any more than I have to, because it's pretty thin. So I've made this little medallion here, and I'm going to inlay it over where that hole is that I used to cut all this stuff out. Now it's tiger maple, and I've cut it into 6 segments and put it together just like the field, and it's glued to some walnut veneer. Now I've got a piece of double stick tape on here. I'm just going to line it up with this line that I've drawn back here, press it down. With this in place, I'm going to take this knife. This is actually a scalpel, brand new, so it's very sharp. I'm going to hold this in place, and I'm going to start tracing around this. I'm going to go light at first and then progressively go a little bit deeper with each pass. So with that scored, I can just twist that off of here. I've got a nice outline of where that's got to go. With that outlined, I need to remove all the material here, and to do that I'm going to use this router. I've got the router set up with an 1/8 inch downcut spiral just because it's very easy for me to control. I've set the depth by zeroing out the router and using the inlay itself to set the depth stop. And I've tested it on another piece of material, and I know it's going to sit flush with the top. So I just need to plunge this down, be very careful to stay inside that line and get rid of that extra material. Well, after about a half hour of messing with this, I got it where it's pretty darn close. A little sanding around the edges, and it fit in there. I've got this medallion out of the clamp, and it came out really, really nice. I cleaned it up a little bit, and the glue actually filled in those little tiny hairline cracks that were there. So it's just about perfect. Now I want to do an edge treatment on this, and it's going to be a 1/4 inch round over. I've got that bit chucked up in my router, and I'm going to do the bottom first, then flip it over and do the top. I've got the top screwed back down to this jig, and I'm going to run this edge against the fence of my table saw and just creep up on the cut here until I get a really nice cut right where this medallion is. These slots here are for buttons that will eventually go in and hold the top. One other thing I want to do to this is I want to tone down the maple border to the walnut field. There's just too much contrast, and I also want to pop the grain in the tiger maple. So I've got some water-based maple dye. It's not a very strong solution of it, but it's just enough to tone this down a little bit, and also going to pop those tiger stripes out a little bit. Now with this dry, I'm going to take some blonde shellac. This is a 1.5 pound cut, and I'm going to seal that coloring in to the tiger maple. With that shellac dry, I want to sand back a lot of it, and I just want to leave the coloring in the stripes of the tiger maple. Well, I've sanded back most of that shellac, and the coloring is just left in the tiger stripes, plus the wood is a little bit warmer. Now, there's one thing left to do on this. There's a lot of color differences between the different areas of this top here, and I want to, again, tone that down a little bit. So I've got a very, very light water-based aniline dye walnut, and I'm going to put this on here again, very, very light, and what it's going to do is it's going to even out all those colors. I just need to really make sure I don't get any on the maple. Now for the top coat, I'm going to be putting on General Finishes Armor Seal, and the first coat's going to go on pretty liberally. I'll let it sit for about 5 minutes and then wipe it off. Well, I've got that first coat on and the excess wiped off. It looks beautiful. I'm going to let this sit for 24 hours, and then tomorrow I'll come back, wipe it down a little bit to make sure I don't have any dirt or debris on it, and put a second coat on. I'll probably end up putting 3, maybe 4 coats total on the piece. Well, after 4 coats of the armor seal, I flattened the surface with 600 grit sandpaper, and I put down a coat of paste wax on it, and this came out really, really nice. It's really smooth. Well, that's it. This table will get installed directly into a wall. I'll just take some screws in through the back apron directly into some studs. More than enough holding power. I'm really happy with the way this came out. The figure on everything is just beautiful.